Indeed, thank you for tuning in to Good Morning Kenya. Now we shift gears and talk matters transformative leaders. My name is Mike Migu, and today we are talking about the regreening action, which is one of the things that are within the 2021 to 2030 UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. To help me in this conversation in studio, I'm joined by Alvas Onguru, who is Mwamba RFC President. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
And also Reinhard Nyandire, who is a business development manager at Just Digit. Karibuni sana.
Thank you.
Let me start with you. You are embarking on a walk in New York City to raise funds for the regreening action. Mm-hmm. Why now and why New York?
Why now is that it's urgent.
Yes.
Climate change is happening very, very fast. Mm-hmm. The earth is warming more faster than you can manage.
Yes.
And so what we're trying to do is try and mitigate the effects of climate change. Mm-hmm. One of which is, the earth is warming up really rapidly.
Yes.
And so the sooner we do these things, obviously, the better it's going to be, the cooler the earth is going to be. And so the time is now. There's no better time. They say there's no better time than now. Mm-hmm. The best time was yesterday. The second best time is today. So, so we're doing that now. And why New York is because we're working with an organization. I work at Just Digit as well. And so we're doing this work in New York to raise money for our regreening actions. There's a group we work with called 24 The Planet. 24 The Planet organizes these walks that are 24-hour walks in several cities across the globe. But the first city was in Amsterdam, and then they're going to Budapest, and then now they're doing the walk in New York. And the New York one is where we've been invited to come and participate and take part in this. But also the walk in New York is coinciding with the Climate Week in New York. And so it's a platform where a lot of people from around the world, people work in climate change, people work in climate action, are meeting to talk about climate issues. And so this work is happening on the sidelines of Climate Week. Mm-hmm. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for us to meet people who work in that same sector, mm-hmm. people who are worried about climate, people who have a conscience about climate. And so we then coming to this work to raise money for our organization, for Just Digit, which sort of just does, Just Digit does regreening interventions across Africa. Uh-huh. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for us to meet climate action people, to raise money there and to create awareness really about the work we do in Africa.
Uh-huh. Let me come to you, Mr. Nyandire. Why use sport and specifically rugby to enhance or raise awareness in these efforts of regreening the planet?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll give a very clear example here. I knew about Cristiano Ronaldo being a man back in the village when we had no TV. But radio, KBC, I remember those kind of sports. So what I'm trying to say is that sports penetrates to the very, very local level. Mm-hmm. And in the whole regreening or restoration initiative, so climate change mitigation or conservation, so to speak, mm-hmm. affects the local people. Yes. At the very, very local level. Mm-hmm. So we are using not only just sports, we're using sports and arts to get to the very local level. Mm-hmm. And we are bringing on board ambassadors like currently working with Patrick Kluivert, a former Barcelona player. We are trying to get on board different players like Robin Van Persie as well, mm-hmm. To join us. And in Kenya, we're also working around getting some of the key sports people. But the main reason why we are combining sports and conservation mm-hmm. is to preach out the message and transfer the ownership back to where it belongs to the local communities. Mm-hmm. And aside from that, climate change impacts all sectors. Mm-hmm. I mean, the other day I was talking about, we see water breaks nowadays in football sessions, something that when I was growing up I'd never seen. So you can technically see the impact of climate change mm-hmm. in every sector. So we're using what people love most and what communicates to the very, very local farmer, the very local landowner mm-hmm. in a way that can resonate with mm-hmm. them. So we are using sports because of its outreach to the very local level.
Yes. Alvas, the aspect of communication and technology in all these efforts, what role does it play now that we are talking about creating something you would call a nature renaissance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that term, nature renaissance. Communication and technologies essentially have in a sense made everything shorter, yes. quicker, faster, mm-hmm. and have more impact. Mm-hmm. And now that talk about communication and technology, one of the things we've done as an organization, as Just Dig It, is that we've developed a mobile phone application that allows us, so what we do in essence, basically, in summary, what to do, we work with farmers and pastoralists who use the land as their as their primary source of income. But then again, the land is degrading. As we know, climate change is making everything difficult to do. And so we've got an app that allows us to reach farmers wherever they are. All they have to do is go into the phone and learn what to do, and then take lessons to tree green. So that's one of the examples of how technology is actually allowing things to happen and facilitating really things that we couldn't be able to do in the long form version of life. And so technology allows us to do things to scale up really things very, very fast. And so what technology and communication and technology really has done is allowed us to shorten the time in which it takes things to be done, to shorten the availability of people who can do those things, and I'll put power, if you like, in the hands of people who own land, people who are affected by climate change. And that is essentially what we're trying to do even with this technology that we've got in our hands and our ability to do that thing. And so technology has become a great enabler of scaling up, of shortening time spans, of shortening availability of things and resources and so on and so forth.
But aside from that, we celebrated having regenerated 18.7 million trees early in the year. And then currently we're just 10 years old, and we've been able to get over 400,000 hectares of land under intensive restoration in the ASAL areas in Africa, in Kenya and Tanzania and other countries where we're working in. But then the big question is, how then are we able to confidently say that we have 18.7 million trees? We are able to get satellite data on a regular basis in terms of how every tree and every band we dig perform over time. So we are able to tell tree number 421 performs. How does it perform? What are the progress? Tree number 1, and how are you able to do this? Through satellite data. So that's how you're able to really use technology for monitoring and evaluation.
Of course, the government has a goal of planting more than 15 billion trees by 2032. How do you see that fitting within your efforts?
It definitely fits, because what you do, we call it the FMNR, the Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration, or the Pastoral Managed Natural Regeneration. In this way, we give life to trees that would otherwise be dead if we didn't have any interventions. And the difference between the FMNR and tree planting is that FMNR the success rate is 100%. Tree planting, I'm more for the tree growing aspect. It's a very great ambition for the government, and I hope that we can transfer the ownership to different stakeholders, the local communities, schools, the youth and all that, to grow these trees, because we plant them, but then who then takes care of them? So it's a great initiative, and it definitely fits in, and we are looking into that. How then do we manage to do this? The tree planting activities in Kenya, mostly they target the greener areas where it rains and all that. Now we can combine, in this case now, the pastoral managed natural regeneration, where we focus on the ASAL areas like the Garissa, the Turkana and all that. And I think there's an initiative going on in Turkana that showcases that it's actually possible to grow trees in those kind of landscapes. So through initiatives such as what we have been implementing. And one thing unique, especially around our interventions, are that we mainly focus on indigenous tree species, indigenous grass species, something that relates to the local, and that's other benefits that I feel Kenya or the government should also tap into in terms of biodiversity economy. Looking at the type of indigenous trees that we have, it has medicinal benefits, it has other commercial benefits and all that for the local communities. So
let me come to you. What do you see as are there some sustainable solutions that this work will bring about, especially when it comes to, let's say, farming is one of the things that contribute to land degradation. Are there sustainable solutions that you aim to bring about from this work?
Yes, what we try to do with our, what do you call them, interventions? We try to do with our interventions in terms of regreening is make sure those interventions are sustainable, number one. Number one, they're managed and run by the landowner himself. So whether he's a farmer or is a pastoralist in Kajiado who has 100 goats or 200 goats, what we're trying to do is make sure that this patch of land that you own is not getting barren because of farming or because of grazing by animals and so on, but we allow you, we have interventions that allow you to make sure that this patch of land that you have is regreened in a way that it's continuously sustainable. For instance, one of the things we do in pastoralist areas, for instance, is if you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 acres of land, and you've got another 10 acres that you can use to graze, so you sort of rotate and graze in places where we restore this patch and make sure that it's sustainable for the next 10 years. The grass is growing consistently, and then move to somebody else, move to another piece of land as this one regenerates itself. So the idea is to be sustainably, you're right, to be sustainable enough that it can continue generating itself and regreening itself over time without us being there. without us asking you, giving you guides and training you how to do that.
Yes. Before you respond to that, I also want you to add this, because when we are talking about degradation, we are not talking about just the forest and everything. This is a threat to food security also. So how is that these efforts going to help in ensuring that this food security and the environment are regenerated well?
The main reason why we are where we are today is we're losing the areas of key ecological importance at a very fast rate. And why is that? Because of the competing land use options. We are moving towards a commercialized state, or status, I would say, economic status and all that. So conservation of climate change, we've lost biodiversity due to those competing land use options. Someone looks at it in a way that this land was prime for wildlife use, or et cetera, but then there's an industry that needs to be built somewhere, and we understand the economic aspect. The big question right now, the conversation is moving or shifting towards the nature-based solutions. The approaches that, including what you're implementing right now, that are not only improves the resilience of the local communities, but also the local ecosystems. So in a way that we're looking at the economic aspect, how do we make the local community benefit? And in this way, looking at the way we approach it from a just dig it perspective, we do restoration through digging of bands and all that to control the loss of topsoil, so that we can allow the water to infiltrate the ground, good for agriculture. But aside from that, we have established what we call the landscape restoration enterprise, something that mainly targets the local women, pushing through the agenda of gender in the whole conservation space and desertification conversion. So what we do with the landscape restoration is we've established what we call the grass seed bank. So once we've restored a particular landscape, we seclude maybe over 10 to 100 hectares, and then we allow the grass there to grow to maturity. So the local women harvest the grass seed, they sell it back to us and other entities in the region like conservancies, etc. And then they harvest harvest the grass as hay for dry season for their livestock and
so
all
it's
that.
enhancing
Exactly. So the big question is, how then do we make conservation pay for the local community? How do we address poverty, or maybe how do we speak conservation after breakfast with the local communities who pay the full cost of conservation? Now, in terms of food security, from a landscape restoration perspective, we have what we call the bands and the fanya juu, fanya chini, which technically involves digging of trenches in farming areas where we do farming along the slopey region. So the main idea why we cannot do farming in dry land areas is because of the loss of topsoil and soil erosion. But then what we do then maintains that kind of topsoil, I think it's called humus or something, and then we let the water infiltrate the ground. Once it's stored underground, now make this particular land arable for farming. So that's the way we do it. And we have a big ambitions to create more farmers in the ASAL areas, in the Kenya dryland areas. And I think government has that kind of ambition within its current policies, existing policies and all that. So there's a huge opportunity in terms of how we do it. But the big question is, we need to promote nature-based solutions for adaptation in a way that we make the local communities also benefit for conservation. Because the big question is, the extractive economic activities vis-a-vis or versus the restoration or conservation initiatives. So the big question is, how do we speak money?
Because at the end of the day,
we want to eat and you have to go to school. Exactly.
Now, your work is happening at an international level. So how do you see, or what impact do you expect it will have on the local communities within the country, and how can governments now within Africa, because we are talking about a region of more than half of Africa is at a high risk of getting degraded. How then do we bring the government and the local communities to benefit from your work in New York?
Okay, so number one, we're working at an international level, you're very right, which is in New York. But the organization that we work with, which is 24 The Planet, 24 The Planet organizes these works to raise money solely for Just Dig It. So we are their kind of, their pet project. So all the money that's raised on these works come to Just Dig It. And then when the money arrives at Just Dig It, then what we do is we can then determine whether we want to do restoration. So we've got restoration projects going on in Tanzania, in Kenya, and now in Senegal. And so we can decide, okay, now we've got, hopefully, $10 million for restoration across the 3 countries. So now that we've raised $10 million from this work in New York, we'll then decide where do you want to put this money. Do you want to use it in Tanzania, in Dodoma or Arusha or whatever, or do you want to use it in Kenya, in Narok, in Kajiado or in Isiolo, or do you want to take it to Senegal and do XYZ, depending on the need and the urgency of what we're doing at any one particular moment. So at the international level, yes, it's great that we're getting international exposure and we're getting to talk to people at an international level, and therefore our work and our restoration efforts and we're creating awareness really of the work we're doing in Africa, in New York. And so then we're putting the spotlight in Africa. Like you say, Africa, half of Africa is under threat of degradation.
Yes.
And so we're putting a spotlight on our work from a global level. But the money being raised is raised at a global level, obviously. So that's the hope is that from that international spotlight, we'll be able to raise a lot of money internationally and then deploy that money in Africa, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Senegal, wherever it is we need to deploy it in Africa. But how do you get government involved? Government has obviously the owner of policy. And government has, basically government has hopefully the greater good for everyone in mind. And so if you go to Tanzania, we work with government to facilitate the things we do, to enable facilitation of the restoration efforts we're trying to do. In Kenya as well, government is very, very involved in the work we do. Government is a key partner in the work we do in terms of licensing, in terms of facilitating, in terms of everything we do with government. Government is extremely important in Senegal as well. And so as soon as this money is raised, and we've identified that this money will be useful in restoration in Singida, Tanzania, for instance. Of course, we'll talk to government, and government will then facilitate us with the infrastructure that's required to deploy these resources into the effort we're doing. So government is an extremely important partner in everything that we do in terms of restoration and in terms of regreening.
I want you, Reinhard, to stretch on the need to transform many communities that are they are vulnerable to climate change. Why is that important?
It's very important because these are the local landowners. We get all our food from them, and especially looking at the pastoral communities, is the way, not just pastoral, but I would say it's the way we have lived with conservation over time that has ensured that the existence of these key areas that we're trying to protect today. It's because of the way pastoral communities live their life, and it's embedded in culture. That's why we are now conserving what we have. But then they pay the full cost of conservation. We get money from conservation, but do they really get their portion in terms of dealing with the whole, if it is wildlife, it is human-wildlife conflict, it is climate change, they suffer the most. While you and me can afford to have a cooler in our house and all that, but they suffer the most at the local level. So placing them at the very center of this conversation would be very key. Right now, one of the key initiatives that we're also pushing through, and actually our interventions also, these are just indigenous knowledge that we're scaling up. These are things that used to be practiced in the hundreds of years. And then you did ask Alvas about the role of government. In Kenya, we have county level government. And as Just Dig It, we are a non-governmental organization. And where government can come in and help us play a role, we are working in landscape, and the way from a county level, or the Council of Governors, so to speak, they can help us in terms of doing those kind of cross-boundary or scaling up the whole, working through an entire landscape. Because right now we're trying to connect the southern Tanzania to the northern part of Kenya, coming down to the region. And I think Alvas maybe mentioned or did not, we'll do the work in New York, but then next year we also we hope to work with the government to bring the work to East Africa from Arusha to Nairobi. So there's a huge role in terms that the government can really help us do to scale up what we've been doing over the years.
Due to the interest of time, your parting shot.
My parting shot is we'd like everyone to sponsor us in our work in New York. And so there's a link, you might send it later on, but yeah, we've got our fundraising page, and all you need to do is just, I think the page is at 24theplanet.com, and just log in there, find our fundraising page, and contribute and donate. Then you can play a part in regreening and conserving climate in Kenya.
Okay, Reinhard.
My parting shot.
Yes.
You talk about the policies.
Yes.
The main reason why our policies, we fail to get the larger public to rally behind them. And that's where the role of the media comes in. So there's a huge opportunity for media to spearhead this, and you need to take these conversations as regular as you can and follow up the conversations coming up in the year. So take this as a personal initiative, and I think you'll see how far or the big opportunity that exists for the media and awareness in terms of these policies.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time for Good Morning Kenya.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, that is Reinhard Nyandire, who is a business development manager at Just Dig It, and also Alvas Onguru, who is a member RFC president, talking to us about the regreening action that is and the walk he is going to take in New York later on this year. My name is Mike Migwe. This is where we cap Good Morning Kenya. Don't go too far. We are taking you right to the Senate buildings for the hearing of Kawira's Mwangaza's impeachment that is going to take place today. Good morning. Stay with us.